I'm going to keep an eye on what the, I'm not going to be staring at it, but on the timer, because I want to make sure we don't get interrupted by the recording.
So what's happening right now?
It's recording. It'll stop recording in 26 minutes.
I mean, can we stop this and start all over and take over it? Because this is just you and me talking. We haven't worked out some of the details yet. You know what I'm saying?
We don't need to.
So if I'm talking about the music, should I be looking at you or should I be looking over there?
You do what makes you comfortable.
Well, I would feel weird talking to the camera if you're sitting over here, and I really want to be talking to you.
Don't talk to the camera.
You don't? All right. Well, this is by Fats Waller, and it's called Hagar's Blues. And he was a big guy, and he had large hands. And I'll tell you in a minute how I know that he had large hands. He was helping to usher in the style of music.
He had big gloves.
Yes, he did. But I know from different evidence than that. So, when you see pictures of him, he's mugging for the camera. His eyes are big and his mouth is askew. And so this style of music called stride piano, which is a piano style of music. And the stride is kind of like how you walk. Well, now this is weird where I'm talking to you, not even looking at you.
Oh, I'm listening.
Okay. So he plays, the stride is this in the left hand where you play some notes in the bass and then you play some notes in the middle of the thing. So you go from way down to, in the middle. So that's the stride. That's what's going on the left hand. In the right hand, he's doing something different. I'm going to play the beginning and just without any embellishments, the very first couple measures. Well, first thing he does is he syncopates it, which is adding a beat where you don't expect one and taking one out where you do. He gives it that jazzy feel. And then he plays in octaves, and octaves are 8 notes apart on the keyboard, and it's exactly, look at this a minute, it's exactly this distance, Chris, between my thumb and my little finger, and all octaves are equally spaced. You're playing 2 C's or 2 D's or 2 E flat. So this passage syncopated in octaves. So it gives it a fuller sound. Then he adds grace notes, which are quick notes that come before another note, and on the page they're written really small, and so it would be like this. It's not like, but it's fast. So here's that passage, syncopated octaves, grace notes. He also uses what are called triplets. That's like 3 notes before another note. 1, 2, 3, 1, like that. He uses tremolo, which is it's like trembling, sort of. And he also uses what's called shuffle, which shows up a lot in boogie woogie. So he didn't invent any of those things, but he incorporated them. Well, then in the left hand, he uses a bigger space, not octaves, 8 notes apart, but tenths. And that is my thumb and my little finger stretched out as far as it can go. And I cannot reach all tenths because they're not evenly spaced on the keyboard because of the black and white keys. And so, well, first of all, here's a passage with octaves. And here it is with tenths. So it's a fuller sound. It actually has its own harmony. Well, then he does something which is very interesting. He has you stretched out as far as you can go, and then he adds a note like right here. Look at me a second. Well, I don't have a finger right there. So, what do you do? So the thing you can do is you can play the bottom note, and then the roll it like this. It's perfectly okay to do. So here's how I know that he had big hands. Composers who are going to play the music that they write music that they can play.
Yeah.
If he couldn't play all those tenths, he wouldn't write them. Like I have never encountered a tenth with Bach, Chopin, Mozart, Beethoven, Schumann. I don't think they had big hands. He did. So this is Aunt Hagar's Blues, 1921.
It was really neat. I could see all the things you were talking about. Right
Cool.
Here. You know that little jump step, it sounds like, you said you don't go ding ding, you go clink, you know.
Yeah, a great step.
In the past, I've interpreted that as a misplay. as a slight, you know?
They missed the note and then they got
hit two
right.
keys at the same time kind of thing. Because that's what it sounds like.
Yes, it could. and when you actually do that, you hope people will think it's a grace note.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Johnny Mathis?
Not familiar. I know who he is.
You know who he is?
It's a country singer. Or...
Say that again? Or what?
Is he the country singer?
No. He is a black guy. Turns out he's a gay man, although he was not out in the probably late 50s, 60s. He was like, I guess you'd say, a crooner, very romantic music. And I would venture to say that, and he was very popular among white kids, I would venture to say that that black gay man helped a lot of guys get laid. People would put on his music, it was very romantic to hear. And this was one of his signature pieces.
Oh, hold on a second.
So Johnny Mathis he's in a bar, he's in a club, and he hears Errol Flynn play this piece, Misty, and he approaches him and he says, I'd like to sing that song. Flynn says, that's great, but it doesn't have any lyrics yet. I just wrote it. It was a misty day. It was drizzling that day. And so they get a lyricist, but when the lyricist writes it, it's about someone when, I'll say he, but it doesn't really say, when he's near the woman he's in love with, his eyes, he gets misty-eyed. So he says, the beginning is, look at me, I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree. I get misty holding your hand. So it's very romantic with the lyrics. and it became one of his signature songs. And I want to tell you something about it. Music, Western music is written in sections. And the first section would be called the A section, the next section the B section, and so forth. In jazz, they call it the melody, and the B section would be called the bridge. And popular music in jazz just has two sections. Classical music sometimes has more than that. So here's the structure. You hear the A section. Sounds familiar to you? You hear the A section the second time. Each section is about 8 measures long, which is just shy of 30 seconds. So these aren't long things. So then you hear it again, it's a little bit different. Then you hear the B section, and that'll sound familiar too. And then when he goes back to the A section, he begins to improvise. Now this isn't improvisation because it's written down, but that's where in jazz they begin to improvise. And you will know it because you won't hear that familiar melody anymore, and it's higher up on the keyboard. So you won't be able to follow along in your mind, like singing along. You go through an A section twice, it's different each time. Then you hear the B section in this improvising mode, and then he comes back to the A section, and it sounds very much like the beginning. And to me, that's where the magic happens. You start off someplace that becomes familiar because you hear it a couple times. Then you go somewhere, it's different, and then when you come back to what was familiar, that's, I think, when it gets you here. And that is typical of classical music and popular music. It's really what happens a lot. So, and I would also like to say that when you're playing a piece like this, and even the Fats Waller piece, it's expected that you will put your mark on it. So a lot of this is me. I've changed it up quite a bit. This is Misty by Erroll Garner. Margaret Bond, about 1913, 1915 to the 70s, I think. She got accepted in the music school in Northwestern University, but she was not allowed to live in the dorm and she was not allowed to eat in the cafeteria. She was the first woman and the first African American to perform as a featured solo pianist with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and this was while she was still in college. And one day she's in the basement of the school library and she discovers the poetry of Langston Hughes, who was the Harlem Renaissance poet, and she felt that his poem, The Negro Speaks of Rivers, spoke to her, and she said his poetry changed her life. A few years later she met him and they became lifelong friends, like brother and sister, and had an influence on each other's careers, and she set several of his poems to music. She also wrote classical arrangements of Negro spirituals, and that's what this piece is. It's called Troubled Water, and it's based on the spiritual Wade in the Water. So you're going to hear that a lot. So here it is, Wade in the water. Wade in the water, children. Wade in the water. God's going to trouble the water. So you hear that throughout, and sometimes you just hear wade in the water, and sometimes just water, like that. She also quotes another spiritual, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, the line, coming for to carry me home. Coming for to carry. And then there's this. It's all of a sudden, it's like a clarion call, like a, pay attention, listen up. They used to do that, like in battle. And this is a piece about escaping slavery, because a lot of times these spirituals had a secret message, and the secret message of this one was, if you're running away and they're chasing you with dogs, get in the water, because they can't smell you if you're in the water. So wade in the water, trouble the water. This is very much a piece about escaping, and I think it's very lyrical sometimes, it's always rhythmic, it's very dynamic. It's sometimes troubling, and I think at the end it's very much about triumph. Whether or not the person was successful, the effort is triumphant. This is Chatanooga Choo Choo. Chatanooga's a funny word. Choo Choo's a funny word. So this has got to be a fun piece. Should I say the words again?
Yeah, start over, because I kind of forgot already anyway.
All right.
It's not entirely true.
Make sure I got the right one. Okay. All right. Chatanooga Choo Choo's funny words. Chatanooga and Choo Choo. And this is a fun piece. 1941. People think of the Andrews sisters singing it because it was popular during the war, and they're wearing kind of like military uniforms, and they sing it. But actually in the movie, it's from a movie called Sun Valley Serenade. And so the movie's before the war. And it's a guy, he's not a soldier, and he's on the way to Chattanooga. He's going to see his girlfriend. He's in New York City at the train station. He's very excited about it. And he walks up to a soldier and he says, "Pardon me, boy, is this the Chattanooga Choo Choo?" And then he sings about surprising her, and you leave Pennsylvania Station about 3:45, read a magazine, you're in Baltimore. Nothing could be finer than your ham and eggs in Carolina, which is a reference to the song Nothing Could Be Finer Than to Be in Carolina in the Morning. And so he's headed to Chattanooga, and it's in a boogie-woogie style, which is, gives that feeling of the urgency of the train. And I have heard from a man who worked with the railroads that boogie-woogie is a rail term, and that it refers to when a train is going around a curve, when the train car vacillates back and forth, and that they would call that boogie-woogie. And he does things in this arrangement to give you the sound of a train horn. I think if you like November Rain, that you're going to like this piece. And you may not remember this from the 70s, because you were born in the late 70s. But this is Boz Scaggs. You remember Boz Scaggs?
I know the name.
Well, he was this guy, and he sang this song. This is without a doubt the most famous thing that he sang that I know of, and Rita Coolidge did a version of it. And it is called We Are All Alone, which is a lousy title. A much better title would be We're in This Together, which I think fits considering what we've all been through in the last 2.5 years. And this is similar to the jazz arrangement with Misty, in that it's a popular song, and so there's an A section and there's a B section, and we hear the A section twice, and it's a little bit different the second time. And then when he gets into the B section comes the part that feels like improvisation. but he does something a little different. Instead of having improvisation on the A section and then an improvisation on the B section and back and forth, he takes parts of each of the sections and puts them together and plays with them. Improvisation means like you're playing with the harmony, you're playing with the melody, you're playing with the rhythms. Jazz people love to do that. And but the way that he does it is more like a classical piece, like in the development of a sonata, where you take parts of both of the melodies and you play with them together. I think this is something that like builds and simmers and gets loud and soft again and loud and soft again, and then it builds to a climax. Then it ends to very quietly. I feel like it's almost like serenading someone when I play this. I'd like to do one more for you.
Yeah.
That's Malagueña.
Play some Skinner.
I want to do Malagueña. This is something I do as an encore.
Oh, this is the song from. Oh wait, no, I'm thinking of something else. I know this song.
You know
is
this
one
song.
of my favorite songs you play.
Yes. And it was my parents' favorite, and they wanted me to play it all the time. And I used to, no, Dad, I want to do it. And when I worked in my uncle's store, he sold pianos, and my other uncle would always want me to play this piece to demonstrate it. And I got so tired of playing it. So then when I was in my 40s, Chris, I realized my parents have always supported me playing the piano. They paid for my lessons and everything, and they want to hear me play this song. Sit down and shut up and play the damn song. So from then on, anytime they asked, I just played it, and I've grown to really like it a lot. So I feel like I've reclaimed it. This is Malagueña. It's by a Cuban composer, but it's very much in a Spanish style. And Malagueña is the dance of the town of Malaga, which is in southern Spain. So this is by a guy whose name is a recent discovery of mine. His name is Sergei Bortkiewicz. Bortkiewicz. And his family was Polish nobility, but their estate was in Ukraine. And he studied music in Russia. And then he was in Berlin when World War I broke out. So they detained him because he was a Russian Empire citizen. Then he comes back to Ukraine, and the Russian Red Army comes through, and they take the Russian Revolution, they take the family's estate. Then the White Army comes through, they get it back, but everything's been stolen. Then the Red Army comes through, and then they really lose everything. And he has no resources, and he manages to teach in various universities in Europe. And he's in Vienna when World War II breaks out, and he can't leave. And he's a Russian citizen, Russian Empire citizen. And the Nazis come and take his music. They shut down the publisher that was owned, his publisher that was owned by a Jewish family. So he can't sell any music, he can't get any royalties. And his wife, they're really destitute. This is a piece from 1941, so I don't know how it survived the Nazis, but it's called Lyrica Nova, which is Latin. I have no idea why he named it in Latin. Nobody does that except religious music. Lyrica Nova means new song, and this is number 3 out of 4. And there's something, I think it's very Eastern European with this beautiful melody and these rich harmonies. It's a really beautiful piece, but at the very beginning it sounds a little unusual, but then that gives way.